function of satsang. It's the function of these talks, the function of any kind of consideration of the teachings. It is to clear away those obstacles in our understanding that is preventing us from applying ourselves in some maximum way to our spiritual practices. On that note, one of the things that we talked about last time was the fact that all of us are fundamentally trying to obtain happiness. Fundamentally. We're doing everything that we know how, that we can imagine, that we've heard even, would lead to the obtaining of happiness. The problem, of course, is that we've tried all of that stuff, and none of that stuff has to date worked. And that becomes part of the serious kind of reflection that we have to do. We have to really pause for a moment, at least for a moment, and stand back from our lives and take a very closer look at it and consider our actions up until this point in time. And when you look at all of your actions, what is it that you discover? We begin to see how meaningless our actions have been with respect to our obtaining the goal of happiness. We all want happiness. We want to be permanently happy. And we're trying to construct this happiness out of impermanent material. Now this becomes the problem. How will you construct a permanent state of happiness out of impermanent materials? You cannot construct that state out of husband and wives and children and jobs and careers and so many other things, because all of these things are impermanent by definition. And so as long as we are engaged in this futile attempt to construct permanent happiness out of impermanent things, then we're going to remain in this state of disappointment. We're going to remain in this state of hunger and thirst for the state. When we draw back our attention for a moment and look at our lives, and we begin to closely examine them, then we have to come to some very hard truths, some very harsh realities have to be gone through. And of course, we begin to see that almost all of the actions that we have done with this physical body has not really produced the coveted goal of happiness. I mean, think about it for a while. Look at all the thousands and thousands of actions you put your body through, thinking that you will obtain happiness, and it has not worked. The Master said, looking at this, realizing this, that this has all been futile, says to hold on to that realization and now practice the Dharma. Whenever you are able to get that insight, penetrate into the meaninglessness of all of your activities, all of the things that you've been doing up until this point in time, has been absolutely meaningless in terms of delivering that state of happiness that you sought. Upon realizing this, the Master says, rest in this view and practice your Dharma. What are the myriads of things that we find ourselves engaged in? Think about it. Now look at all of the talking that you've done. I should say we've done. I've been there a great deal of the time, so. But look at all the talking. And we go on talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. And you've been talking for years about happiness. And all of that talking has to date not led to one moment of happiness. Seeing this, the Master says, drop all this ceaseless, useless talking and put that energy into practice. Thinking, plotting. Look at all the plans. Have you thought about it? Look at all of the myriads of plans that you have made, schemes that you have hatched in your mind to obtain happiness. Look at it. There must be thousands of them. Have any of the plans that you have made resulted in the obtaining of this state of happiness? Think about it. And we spend all our time thinking about that. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to attain happiness. I'm going to get me a husband, I'm going to get me a wife, I'm going to get me some children, I'm going to get me some degrees, I'm going to get me a better job, I'm going to get me a different house, get me a different this, a different that. And all of these plans, all of these schemes that you have wasted your whole life in concocting, have any of them led you to that state of happiness? Temporarily at best. Yes. Temporarily at best. For a few minutes, there's some relief, and then it's gone. The Master says, seeing this, understanding this, hold on to that view and drop all of these plans and practice the Dharma. So wherever we look, in any of the activities that we're engaged in at the level of body, speech, and mind, we have found that all of it, until this day, until this moment in time, have been useless. What is one to do about that? If one is really serious about the pursuit of happiness, the obtaining of happiness. And that becomes our first challenge. And we have to look at all of these things. Now, it may be a little depressing initially, but only initially. And then we have to look at, of course, the granddaddy of all reflections, and you have to look at the fact that you don't have unlimited time. Yes, Sister Johnson.
I need to know what you mean by happiness.
Happiness.
Because several things keep running through my mind. I'm not sure any of those fit.
All right. Let's pause for a moment and see if we can collectively define what is this thing about happiness that we all pursue. And the best way to do that, let's just take a quick survey. We're small enough to do that. Let's start on this side. Happiness. You're in pursuit of happiness. What is happiness? How would you define this thing called happiness that you're in pursuit of? Everybody has 2 minutes. You don't get it in 2 minutes, we pull the cord. Because if you don't even have a clear idea of happiness, I used to always say, how would you catch a bear if you don't know what it looks like? Sandra quickly came to the
I think peace of mind.
peace of mind. That is what happiness produces. That's a side effect. That's a byproduct of happiness. It's peace of mind. Yes. So that we see as some of the byproducts. But what is happiness? I mean,
I think happiness is the word itself is just a mood, so it changes. I mean, that's what I think of it as, something that you want this feeling of euphoria or whatever, but that feeling is still a mood when you break it down, so it's not going to be something that's ongoing. I think peace and to be at peace and all that is kind of different from happiness. Initially, I think that's what happiness is, but I think peace, being at peace is deeper than happiness.
Let's see now, to Ketty Rock, move us down that road. Let's finish this side, Ketty Rock. You'll have 2 turns. Pam?
When I think of the word happiness, I just think of it as being like a catch-all term that means the attainment of any desire that you might have. It could be peace of mind, it could be the attainment of more material things, being able to control people, aspiring after status. This desire is being met.
Yes, the ending of desires, or the fulfillment of all your desires. Sometimes we define happiness as the capacity to fulfill every desire that comes into our mind. That we never know any kind of frustration of our desire. I don't care whether it's for a piece of candy or for a Mercedes. If it's a desire in my mind, and I want that desire to be fulfilled, and when there is this uninterrupted fulfillment of my desires, I call that continuum happiness. All right, Sherry, Big M.
I would say happiness to me means satisfaction with myself. I say that because if I am satisfied with myself, I am happy, and that is irregardless of anything else that's going on in my life. I may not even be able to pay my bills, but I ask myself, am I reasonably happy?
meaning are you reasonably satisfied with yourself?
Yes.
And so if we have, if we, then according to your definition, then if we have not attained this state of happiness, it's simply because we have not accepted ourselves.
I want to work on accepting myself, and that applies to my circumstance in life and my interactions with other people. As long as I'm satisfied with myself, then I'm happy.
And if we're unhappy, then by definition we're
Then I
not
have not
satisfied.
lived up to my own expectations.
I see, I see. So you're frustrating your own, in some sense, your own desire to be
It's
with
all rooted in me.
All rooted.
I decide.
So the RG in the back, and then we'll come to the next side. What is happening? We're all in pursuit of this thing called happiness. We come to the path, we go to church, we go to school, we get married. Every activity that we engage in, whether we are conscious of it or not, is aimed at the obtaining of happiness. And this total pursuit of happiness is descriptive of all living forms. So the gods and goddesses all the way down to the amigo, senior, and Niagara, all, without exception, are in pursuit of the obtaining of this thing called happiness. Now you are also, therefore, in pursuit of this thing called happiness. But what is happiness that you are trying to obtain?
A state of ecstasy, or a state where there's no desires.
A state of you trying to transcend all your desires.
They call ecstasy.
I see. So you and Pam came from the same region. Very good. We get some insight because we want to help Sister Johnson here clarify in her mind what this thing called happiness is. Etc. You are in pursuit of happiness continuously. Body, mind, speech.
I think happiness is a value system. As one grows and develops, that the definition changes. It reminds me of in Buddhism, it asks the question, who is called the waking one when asleep? And who is called the sleeping one when awakened? The answer is that the individual who is seeking enlightenment is called the awakened one when he's asleep. But compared to someone who is already enlightened, he's asleep. So I'm seeking my happiness simply by the mere essence of becoming awakened.
To become awakened. All right. That's so profound. That's your brother.
I don't know what to say behind that.
But you must say something because you too are in pursuit of happiness. And remember, what you're seeing is each person has their own ideal of what happiness is. What is your ideal of happiness?
You know, all the books you read that say if you do God will and come around to this peace and bliss, you know, and His will, if you do God will, then this automatic peace and bliss you will attain by just doing His will.
I want you to focus more on what we are doing on an individual level in our life to obtain happiness. That is our motive behind everything. What is your program? How have you been trying to obtain happiness?
Trying to get up and trying to concentrate on my mantra, that, just trying to do that. And even as much as my mind is telling me to don't do it, God keep allowing me to get up to do it. And as much as I want to be mad about it, I find myself rejoicing over it, feeling good about it, feeling good about just waking
Is that your
up.
primary strategy for obtaining happiness?
Yeah, I think somewhere
So,
else.
okay,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, you know, I have to see so far.
We're just getting started.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
All right. Let's swing to Rashish and then Ketteran. We'll save Sister Johnson for last. The first shall be last, as usual. Rashish.
What is my definition or
What is your
what I'm doing
definition?
to
What is
achieve
your-
happiness?
Yes, because we all are trying to achieve happiness. We have to therefore have some kind of ideal what it is, and then we also have a pattern, a lifestyle that is aimed toward attaining that.
or you want to set goals for yourself and try to achieve those. And realizing the fact, I'm happy when I just realize my limitations. I mean, we all striving to be happy, but the negative part of that is if you can't achieve your goal, you still should be happy.
All right, so far I'm hearing the person that we're peeling away the top of that. We'll come back and we'll get underneath all of this. Get to you, right?
Well, I mean, for me, certainly, and I would imagine for everyone, initially, and still to some degree, my trying to achieve happiness has been through ego-based things, like I want to attain this, I want to have this or accomplish this, on this physical level. But, over the past couple of years, I've realized that truly the happiness, the ultimate happiness for me is to know myself. And through that, it could be, a lifelong, thing, but to continue to know myself and understand that that's really the prerequisite to attain or even to begin this process of attaining the true peace that I want. So for me, I mean, on a daily basis, there's still those things that, because we are in this world, that physically I want to attain, but I understand that, I mean, if I attain them, it was supposed to be. If I don't, it was supposed to be. And that those are the things that I'm doing on this level, but I still have this ultimate goal that, really I have to focus and aspire to accomplish.
We'll have Dr. Johnson make her remark and then we'll come back to you. All right, so still now, you've had all these people helping you, giving you some insight. Now, what do you say?
Well, what I say is that there are happinesses and there are happinesses. I think I get a sense that there are the temporary transitory kind of happinesses that comes from achieving goals, from feeling good about things, from getting married, etc. And then there is the more deeper kind of happiness that comes from being at peace with yourself, being comfortable with yourself, self-esteem kinds of things. But I think there's a more profound kind of happiness that we're all sort of at some level seeking, not yet there, which is the absence of all of that, something to do with being one with God or being being at where you're unmoved, untouched by anything, everything, and knowing, realizing that that's something within, which we call God, which we call design, which we call whatever. So, and I think we got to be confused sometimes.
Yes. I like that answer very much. And let's just take your comments, Elijah, and then let's go into that. Because that's very important. All that's been said in that summary is very good. And I think by following that, we'll get some insight. Now, that's the first thing that's got to get clear. So, Elijah, you were saying.
What I want to say is that from the teaching, it states already that we already in a state of happiness. What I understand. That desires that the mind creating desires, it doesn't produce this happiness. Because you're already in that state. The desire that produces something that makes you So what I'm saying is happiness is already the case. It's just a form of real state. Where you are. And by eliminating the desires, happiness is that.
All right, that's very good. So I think out of these answers that we got, we're beginning to get some insight into the dynamics of what produces happiness, what happiness is and what happiness is not. I like all of these comments. I like particularly the part, Sister Johnson, where you say it's like coming to a halt. It's like coming to a rest. It is sort of like a cessation of activities. Buddha used the word nirvana, the extinguishing of desires. And Pam pointed out to us that the way that we try to extinguish our desires is to fulfill the desire. So as desires arises in the mind, we immediately make every effort to fulfill those desires, which is an endless task, right? Because the moment one desire is fulfilled, it creates another desire. And in this way we go on and on and on, never coming to a point of rest, not ever coming to an end of anything, and constantly in motion. And the ideal of nirvana, the ideal of coming to a rest, is the ending of all of this strife, has been indicated by the mystics to be characteristic of the experience of the state called happiness. Now, Sadaji has taken us even a step further into this analysis. He has said that, well, the case is that you are already in a state of happiness. If we are already inherently existing in God, then we are necessarily already in the contact with all of these qualities that we define as being characteristic of God. Happiness is one. But that we have lost our awareness of this oneness. Therefore, we have lost the experience of our happiness. So it looks somewhere between these two things, don't it? Right? Now, the one is a little bit more metaphysical and profound, but certainly we can see that this whole ideal of trying to come to an end, to come to a point where we're finished, right? We're trying to do something to attain a state, then from that attainment not to have to do anything else. You're almost looking for a kind of form of retirement from the world, right? Yeah, you're trying to disentangle yourself from this mess. You're trying to get it all over with so that you can just rest in this peacefulness. Right? And alas, this is what we're having so much difficulty in trying to accomplish. So, what are we to do? What are we to do? What seems to be the way out of this dilemma? Now, Ketira said something that struck me as very, very significant. She mentioned the role that ego plays in us. And the question now on the table is this: can you ever obtain happiness as long as you have ego? Can the ego ever be happy? Can any of the goals of the ego ever result in happiness? Then it would almost seem that the key to happiness is the transcending of ego. That when one is able to transcend one ego, one automatically now regains one's conscious connection in the oneness. Would that make sense to you? That it is this ego and being involved in all of the activities of this ego that keeps us from that awareness of our fundamental oneness already with God. So ego becomes the culprit, doesn't it? Now, how do we deal with this ego, if your ego is the problem? Now, the mystics say that all of the suffering that we're going through is directly the result of our ignorance, with no exception. With no exception. Sakura has used another beautiful example that comes to us through the Buddhist tradition, where they make the distinction between those who awake and those who are asleep. Those who awaken are those who have risen above and out of their egos. Those who are asleep are those who are still functioning in their egos. It seems that we are locked in our egos. What to do about this? What to do about this? This becomes our challenge. Now that's on one side of the equation. Again, we're all trying to obtain happiness. Perhaps it is this very effort to obtain happiness that is the problem. Have you ever thought about it? What if you just simply drop all the effort to obtain happiness? What would be the result of that? Would it be misery?
Yeah.
Think about it.
I think that's part of kind of sort of how I think of it, like when you're just doing. I mean, you're here because we're here physically. You could just do because you know you have, something that you're doing. You're not looking for any reward. You're not looking necessarily for any kind of gain out of it, but that you're just functioning and doing
Yes,
whatever it is you're supposed to be doing.
Yes, but you have no investment in that in terms of it producing a state of happiness.
Yeah, right. You're doing it for the sake.
But the mystics call it detachment. Living very detached. Detached, that is, from the expectation that this will produce happiness. The mystics have seemed to have suggested to us that at some point one has to drop this whole effort to be happy. Now this is profound. This is a very radical teaching. To drop that whole seeking. And in the dropping of that seeking, there involved the dropping of this ego. And the experience of happiness is already there. It is this seeking then that is moving us away from it. The more you seek happiness, the further you will be moved from the obtaining of happiness. Now this is profound. This is profound. One of the first teachings that the Buddha gave was on this subject of the nature of suffering and unhappiness. And all the mystics says that without any exception, that you cannot obtain happiness in the world of your ego. The world that we live in, the world of our egos, no happiness is possible. You cannot attain it. Drop the whole effort. And in the dropping of this whole effort, one can attain that which one was seeking. It is already the case. But Rajneesh has spoken for all of us, whether we wish to acknowledge it or not. There is in us this gripping fear that if we drop our pursuits of happiness, that the result will be that we will be miserable. Is that right, Rajneesh? You've gone right to the bottom line, right? We hear the mystics saying this here, but deep down inside of us, we really feel that no, I can't do this, because if I drop my effort, then all that I will experience is misery. Is that about right?
How do you operationalize that? Say you're in the world, say you want a job, you got to live in this world and you got to survive for food and shelter, and you want a promotion on your job, you got a family. Somehow you got to set goals anyway in life. But
I think to get to right, address that, what you say, keep it operational, keep it functional. Be functional. Do not attach any expectation that this will make you happy. Take that away from it, and then just act true. That is the way of the common yoga. Maharaji, all mystics say that we must somehow detach ourselves from the results, the expected results of our action. It is the expectation of the results of our action that is producing the misery. I mean, think about that for a moment. Because that's what we all are challenged with. And remember, we don't have a lot of time. I mean, death is lurking right around the corner. You're going to die. This is not like you have infinite time to achieve this thing. Now I want some discussion on that. I want some feedback. We're small enough now today to have some feedback, some interaction on that.
Well, I was going to say that in your other workshops, when you went over the nature of ego and you broke it down for us, pretty much said that ego involves coverings and separation from God. And if you are ego-driven, then you are constantly separating yourself from God, isolating yourself, and therein lies misery.
Yes.
And when you speak of dropping the ego, to me that means kind of like you're merging, and say a body of water. You're constantly cut off from the mainstream of the water. Okay, you don't have all the benefits of the big body. When you drop that ego, you flow into the big body. Then you just merge.
You just murdered. In fact, the analogy the mystic uses is very much like that, except they say the drop is already in the ocean and simply has to contract its identity to a drop. But certainly we're moving in the right direction here. We're beginning to see now, as Ketura has pointed out, that this whole business about whether we obtain or don't obtain happiness has a lot to do with our individual ego states. Yes, Sister Johnson?
But so much of our behavior is automatic. I mean, we become so programmed
Yes.
to do what we do. And just to get from that to this kind of conscious control over your thinking, actions,
Yes.
seems like a big leap.
A quantum leap. Precisely. And it's because of that gap that spiritual practices exist. The whole function of spiritual practice is to begin to transcend your ego. It has no other function. That is this whole function. And we'll begin to be able to discuss a little bit today, perhaps some things about the nature of spiritual practice that we might not have focused in on. But certainly we want to begin to understand from the outset that this problem is our ego. And this dropping of the ego is the key to the obtaining of this thing called happiness. But I want you to understand there is no activity that the ego can conceive of that will produce the end result called happiness. Please make a note of that. There is no activity that you can think of, that you can engage in, that will produce happiness. There is no activity that you can involve yourself in physically that will produce happiness, because even your body is being managed by the ego. So there's nothing that you ordinarily would be able to do with your body, speech, and mind is directed by your ego that will result in any kind of obtaining of happiness. And this is the first insight that has to be had. And the way to that insight, Sister Johnson, is to reflect on all of the activities that we've been involved in at the level of our ego in body, speech, and mind, and then to examine them and see. And that's the first level of this book. That is why I've just said that we have to look at all your actions. Look at all of the actions that we have been engaging in under the direction of our egos, and look and honestly assess it and see have you been able to obtain happiness. So look at all of them. Yes?
Why is it so easy to see that with other people, but it's hard to see that with yourself?
Because
like
our
everybody think
Yes.
if they became a millionaire, they'd instantly be happy. But you look at every millionaire and look at his life, and if you can get close enough,
Yes.
you see that they're not happy.
Yes.
Well, if you think if I get this promotion, it'll bring me happiness. And you see the person in that position, and we can see that with other people.
Yes.
But when we set our own little individual goals, we kind of broadsided by that.
Sure. Actually, Lieutenant, we call that that is the result of the primordial ignorance that we all inherit. There's a kind of fundamental ignorance in the body that we all suffer from. You see, we not only are not able to see that all people with money are not happy, what is most remarkable, we're able to see people dying, and yet we still feel we will not die. Now, this is the kind of effect that this kind of ignorance produces. And so the first thing that we have to do is we have to somehow remove this ignorance that is obscuring our view of the true nature of life. You see, our views of life, right, are just distorted because of this fundamental ignorance that is generated by the ego. And hence we cannot see it. But you're absolutely right. Even through this distorted view, we still pick up glimpses that so-and-so died, and so-and-so died, and they didn't know when they were going to die, and they didn't know under what circumstances they were going to die, they were miserable. And we see in all of this here, and yet we still hold the view that somehow I am an exception to that. Now that $20 billion didn't make this person happy, but it will make me happy, right? You see, it is that fundamental ignorance that we have to begin to peel away. And the first effort in this removing of this ignorance is tied into deep reflections and examination of your life. Maharaj used to say, quote Socrates all the time. Socrates said that a life that has not been examined is not worth it. It really isn't. And yet we do not pause and examine our life. As Emma said, we just caught up in that flow. We just moving, just being dragged along by incidents, and then that life ends, and you never did. Living has always been somewhere in the future. So how do we do these things? Again, the master said, first, examine the life. Look closely at this thing. Try to see some things. We got to begin to remove those things that are blocking the appropriate views. We all have a lot of wrong views. And one of the greatest views that we have that is wrong is the view on the nature of happiness. We have very, very wrong views. And having that wrong view is what obscures and blocks us in our attempts to attain. So let's begin to see if we can remove some of those things. Again, that's what we come together for. You know, that's what satsang is all about. We're here today and every day that we come together trying to break through some of this deep ignorance that has kept us all chained to this experience of misery and suffering. So now, is it the case? Because remember, we just cannot accept the words of these masters. Is it the case? Do you really feel you can obtain happiness? Now you got to answer that question. You got to be honest about it. You can't bullshit on it. Do you really think that you, by following any of the plans that you got concocted in your little brain, and remember, you got some plans concocted in your little brain. You got them right now. They're written down. And you're busy following your little plans. Now, the question is, do you really, really believe that by following your little plans, that you're going to really obtain happiness? Is what the mystics saying is the case, or is it not the case? Simply, you just can't accept this because the mystics said. Just because the masters have said this, that is not grounds for your accepting it. Look with your intelligence and see. It has to be your conviction. A Mahavira or Kabir or Dadu or Maharaji or Muhammad, they are simply to triggers that intelligence in us, to make us pause for a moment and say, now you look at it. And look very closely at it, and look very honestly at it. Look at all of the schemes you have concocted for the obtaining of this happiness. Look at it very closely. Has it produced? Please consider what the Buddhas have said. And they have said without any exception. Jesus said, he who tries to save their life will lose it. Again, in the same spirit that all masters have spoken. He who tries to obtain happiness via the activities of their ego will suffer. Will simply suffer and will never obtain happiness. And yet, that is the only thing that we're engaged in terms of our pursuit of happiness. Now, that's the bottom line. Everything that you do that is outside of spiritual practice, outside of meditation, falls in the category of your ego. Cost of it. I know you don't like it. What I'm saying, Sister Johnson, is that all time that we spend, all energy that we spend, all activities that we engage in with body, speech, and mind that are not related to meditation is time that we are following the strategies of our ego, and that will never produce happiness. It has not produced happiness for you today. It will not produce happiness for you in the future. And understanding this constitutes the correct view. But it has to be your own, and it has to be real. And the only way that you can make it real is to reflect deeply on this thing. Because you'll hear the teachings, but you've heard teachings before. This is not like the first time you're hearing any teachings. You heard in many of your lifetime, many teachings. And in those lifetimes, you did not understand, you did not reflect. That's why we're back again unenlightened and going through this mess again. Yes, Sister Johnson?
Well, also one of the things that we sort of need to do in order to keep the mind, body, spirit going. Where does that fit into this?
Katie Rye has answered that for us. She took care of that at the beginning. Katie Rye explained to us that there are activities that we have to go through as a result of karma. That's not the issue. The issue is the attaching of the expectation of happiness to the action. You see the difference? Ego, all of ego's actions have the expectation of happiness attached to it. That's how you know it's an ego-based action.
I was going to say one thing, just
Just
well,
you can say as much as you like.
in just the times that I have reflected back on my life, and I can see myself as a person who made plans. I always made plans to do this and made plans to do that. But it has been my experience that all of my plans did not always pan out. So I had to keep myself happy in spite of that. And now I see myself pretty much as a happy person, and there are instances when my happiness is interrupted.
That's not
And
happiness. You see,
that's
by
not
definition,
happiness?
no, that's not happiness.
That's not it?
No, not at all.
What
What
is
we
it?
are able to do, all of us have come up with certain ways to suppress our misery. Right? Some of us, in fact, have been able to actually repress our misery. Right? Now, sometimes you see, we are miserable. And we know we're miserable, but we don't express it. We have suppressed it. And that misery, the suppression of misery, is the foundation of almost all of the mental disorders. Is that not twist at all? When you really peel through a mental disorder, at the base of it, what you find is somewhere a person has suppressed misery, trauma. You understand? They're not working through it, right? And so that's all that we really do. We repress and suppress our feelings of misery, and then we distract ourselves. Now, how will you know that? Well, that is going on in a person's life. You will see people who move from one distraction to the next distraction to the next distraction to the next distraction. But they're distracting themselves from their misery. And while they're distracted from their misery, they're actually having the illusion that they're not miserable. But it's an illusion. The moment the distractions cease, the moment they stop vacuuming, stop working 3 jobs, stop going to take 12 courses at night, stop all of the activities that constitute their distraction, the moment they cease doing that, the misery consumes. And they wind up having a nervous breakdown. So again, we're going to follow the very rigorous definition of happiness. That is just suppression of misery. Does not work. That is the most prevalent way we all go about managing our misery. Have you ever thought about it?
That's a
How?
mismanagement.
Yeah, it's the mismanagement of misery. Right? It is the mismanagement of misery. The appropriate management of misery is meditation. We all, Sister Johnson, mismanage our misery.
Can you explain what misery means again?
Yes. Misery is simply the failure to obtain happiness. That's all misery is.
Oh.
Misery happens, Sister Johnson, when we design a plan and a scheme out of our ego, execute that plan or scheme with the expectation and the hope that the fulfillment and the achievement of this particular scheme will result in our happiness. It fails to do that. And that failure to produce happiness is what we call misery, suffering. No gray areas. No gray areas. You see, either the scheme produced happiness or the scheme did not produce happiness. Now, when the scheme did not produce happiness, then we go back, show you how ignorant we are, and we tweak the scheme. You know, we fine-tune the scheme. Well, it would have worked, but I did this wrong, I did this wrong. Let me tighten this up, tighten this up. And then we launch the scheme again. Again, it failed. We go back, we tighten up the scheme again. Let me try change it. And in this way, we waste our life. Never again. It is an ego-driven action. And remember, ego-driven, as we're using the word just for today, because we use this term many different ways, but for purposes of today's discussion, by ego-driven actions, we simply mean those actions that we're engaging in with the conscious expectation that it will produce happiness, or that it will alleviate suffering. That's the same thing. Because normally, you already are in a state of misery. Already, so much of your life has been rooted in misery. So misery is not a new condition for you. You've been in a state of misery in fact, as far back as you can recall, you've been miserable. And your whole effort has been to alleviate that misery. And you've constructed all kinds of ego plans and schemes that you hoped and prayed will lead to the alleviation of your misery. And yes, some of them did alleviate your misery, Big Emma, as you pointed out, but that was not true relief. That was distraction. You came up with some way to distract yourself, right? And got some temporary relief from your misery. But as the moment that that distraction ended, as it must end, because the activities that constitute the distraction is made up of impermanence to begin with. So it's bound to come to an end, right? And then you return again to your misery. So what we've been doing then, in this life, as well as countless millions of other lives, is simply finding ways to distract us from our fundamental that has been generated by our ignorance. And what the mystics are trying to get us to see is to see through this thing. Try to really get us to really see through this thing, that there is no way through ego-based plans and schemes you're going to obtain happiness. Seeing this, they say, drop all of this stuff and do your meditation. Seeing this, drop it and do your meditation. And they said, look closely and examine the details of all of your stuff. The mystics say, even down to food, because we use food even in this attempt. And he said, now look at all that food you've been eating. What has been the result? It has simply turned into excrement. That is all. Seeing this, drop this whole scheme of trying to eat your way into happiness and do your meditation. Talk. So look at all the talk you've been doing. Trying to, you see. And what has the result of it? Nothing. And the mystic says, seeing this waste of energy, drop all of that and do your meditation. You see? And so they're trying to get us to look into every nook and cranny of our life. See this with your own eyes. And it's important that you see it with your own eyes. You can't see it with another person's eyes. You have to see this with your own eyes. Seeing this, you have now, you will come into the appropriate view. And so what we're talking about essentially is trying to understand how all of your activities of body, speech, and mind that you are engaged in that is not related to meditation is futile in terms of the production of this experience. Seeing this is the only way that your meditation will shift into a new priority. Because this is the problem. We cannot meditate because meditation fundamentally interferes with your ego schemes. Is that right? Let's be clear about this thing. Let's be very clear about this. Your meditation interferes with your ego state. That's it. It almost begins to feel like it is some way, shape, form, or fashion the opposite of what you want to do with you. And this has to be gone into deeply on a personal level. And until you can have that view of your meditation, now it's going to be very hard to derive any benefit from it. In fact, it's going to be very hard for you to do any meditation. So we got to look very closely at these things. And why is meditation at first so difficult for us? Because meditation begins to assimilate the death of the ego. Meditation is just like the death that the ego is going to undergo automatically at some point in time. If you want to know what, get a little taste of what you're going to go through at the bardo of dying, just meditate. That's what it is. It is your acceleration of this whole process. Because the ego is going to collapse. Make no mistake about that. It's going to die. And it's going to be painful. It's not going to be la-di-di-la-di-da. It's going to be excruciating. Far more painful than the meditation. Yes, sister?
All right. You just hit it so exactly in terms of where I am or have realized for myself in the meditation struggle with the mind, and there really were schemes that were interfering with meditation. So for me, I know you should still be doing your meditation, but in my mind, I've realized that my detachment at some, that's a constant process, but that I have to attain some higher level of detachment in order to even do what I'm supposed to be doing.
Do what you got to do. Absolutely. You're right. And the only way to attain that attachment is you got to see this thing. You have to see this thing. You have to see with your own eyes, through your own intelligence. You must see this thing. You must see this thing. You must have the courage to look at the world and want to know the truth about this thing. Why you want to deceive yourself? Look at it. You see, you want to know the truth. You have to become a seeker of the truth. Is it the case? And in seeing this, the detachment automatically is okay. Right? So you have to see the impermanence. So the masters talk to us about you're going to have to try to attain that view where you can see the impermanence of all of this thing that you call life. See the impermanence of this one. Yes, Tor?
Now, I was reading in the ancient Buddhist literature about meditation, and they have a section that says that it's best to be awakened first before you try to practice.
Yes.
And but they say usually people who can do that are people that are more advanced in the path.
Yeah.
But when they're talking about it, awakening, they're not talking about it like, right? Isn't that different?
And what they're talking about fundamentally is being able to see this thing.
Like what we were just talking about.
That's what we're talking about. That is a kind of awakening.
Yeah.
In many cases. Because until you at least awaken from just the impact that Maya has had, until you can throw off the influence that illusion have on your body, it's going to be very difficult. And you can imagine, for instance, if you are fundamentally living in reaction to an illusion, can you see how that living is going to be way off the mark? Because it's an illusion. What is the illusion? The illusion is that there's something permanent out here. The illusion is that there are things that's going to be the same today, tomorrow, and forever. That is an illusion. Nothing is going to be the same forever. Things are constantly changing. And your whole approach has been the kind of combination of things that are impermanent to try to generate a permanent experience. This is bound to fail. This is bound to fail. Any relief you're getting is temporary. That's the insight. All of the relief that you are getting through this distracting of attention, right, is temporary. Do you follow me? Does it make sense? Is that clear? All of the efforts that you made to distract yourself from your fundamental misery is impermanent. It's going to end. Now, you get married to somebody to distract you from your misery. That marriage is coming to an end. You get this activity going on to distract you from your misery. That's also coming to an end. You get that activity to distract you from your misery. That thing is coming to an end. All of the ways that we go about engaging ourselves for purposes of distracting ourselves from our miseries is coming to an end because they are made up of stuff that is not permanent. Do you understand
Would
this?
it be correct in that this is the way that, like I said, where I am, what I'm thinking is that the prerequisite, well, it's already written to that, the prerequisite is to know yourself, but that search for knowing yourself includes all of this. I mean, fundamentally, the product or the sum of it will be these things that you're trying to, have rooted in this, whatever's in your.
Of course. What comes out of this deep reflection is a higher knowledge. That is the very method that we have to engage in to know thyself. You see? It's a very, very deep thing, sister. So Dorothy, you're absolutely right. There has to be a certain amount of awakening to begin with.
Okay, in this other book you're talking about meditation and the technique of having the eyes closed as opposed to having them open.
Yes.
And it says best to do it halfway because a lot of people, when they close their eyes for extended periods of time, they fall asleep.
Yes.
But I thought you had said that it's best to close your eyes. Well, this was like a year ago.
Yes.
To keep distraction down. That's why you have incense and flowers and all that.
Yes. See,
But
that's the Buddhist system. Now, this is a different system of meditation. So what you have to probably understand, sister, that there are so many different meditation traditions. In Buddhism, there's a whole system of meditation that is different from other schools. So these are differences in schools of meditation. The open-eye meditation in the Buddhist system is taught within the context of a whole bunch of other underlying practices. You see my point? And so we mustn't get confused. There are many different forms of meditation. Each of them have to be practiced under the instruction of a teacher or master or guru in that particular technique. So it doesn't mean, therefore, that let's say one just cannot arbitrarily adopt the Buddhist practice of meditation unless you go and get trained by a Buddhist master who will give you all of the other accompanying practices that goes with that. You see? Now, for instance, with the open-eye meditation to minimize distractions and sleep, right? But very often in the Buddhist practice, you will visualize with light, colors. Actually, a yellow sun, symbolizing the element of earth. Because again, all of these elements are what generates the light that you see. So there's a whole bunch of things involved in that whole practice. The interiorization of consciousness. So it can become very confusing. The benefit that we get though from familiarizing ourselves with meditation and all the different traditions is to see the universal role that meditation has played. You see? But we mustn't mix practices. You see my point? You don't mix practices.
When we had the Bhagwan teacher, didn't you say something about one of the reasons why we should meditate with our eyes closed, so when we go through the Bhagwan experience, we'll know what to expect?
Of course. It's, in fact, in our system of meditation, you see, by keeping the spine straight, taking the right asana, that is how we retard the tendency to fall asleep. In other traditions, they were retarded by focusing the eyes downward, about 4 or 5 inches out. Some will focus on the nose. There's many different techniques, you see. Many different techniques. The ideal behind all of this, however, is to simply appreciate the role that meditation has played and see the beauty in that without necessarily confusing the practices. You see? Pranayama yoga is another method. You see, deep diaphragmatic breathing has been useful in bringing the mind into a state of meditation. There's a certain kind of technology, but the system that we have includes all of these things. You see, and so that's the most important thing that we should get when we read these different traditions. Because remember, now when you read the Jain tradition, you're going to see a whole different set of practices, right? And if you read some other tradition, again, you will see a whole different set of practices. When you read the Jewish mystics and their method of meditation, you will see a whole different set of practices, right? And then one can easily try to, make some conglomeration and go nowhere. That practice that the master in that particular lineage gives is fine. But certainly we should be inspired from that. Yes, Sandra?
So the happiness that we attain when we do meditation is synonymous.
Well, what happens in meditation, remember I said that happiness, as Sadaji pointed out, is not something that you have to obtain. It's already the case. It is the ego that blocks your awareness of this already existing state called God. Oneness with God, happiness. And what meditation does, it removes the barrier of the ego. And there's a misunderstanding that we all initially bring to meditation. We think that meditation is going to take us from some place that we're not already yet to some place where we want to be. No. It is already the case that we are one with God. It has always been the case. It will always be the case. It is already the case that we are inherently rooted in a state of perfect bliss and happiness. That's already the case.
Kind of like undoing, it's a process of undoing everything.
It is removing the obstacle called ego. And once the obstacle called ego is removed, automatically one recovers one awareness. Because right now, you think you're ego. You actually think you are that image that you have identified with. You really do. That is ego. And meditation is the only way to break down this misidentification. No psychotherapy can do that. Yes?
So meditation, reflecting, or reciting the mantras?
Meditation, actually, in its essence, is involved in the process of remembering. But it's a very systematic way we go about remembering. For instance, the first part of meditation, as you all know, is that you have to get the outward life straight. Right? You need to see through that illusion. And you need to come and appreciate the opportunity that having a human body is. And all that whole piece has to do with it. You got to lay that moral foundation in place. Right? Reason for that is because every action that you engage in affects you at the level of body, speech, and mind, with no exception. It's not like what you do just there on a physical level. No. Everything you do affects you across this entire spectrum of your being. And when you meditate, you begin to experience the effects that your action produces at the level of the mind. So if your outward lifestyle, if your day-to-day lifestyle is all out of whack, right? It's not in the right view, that it's full of grasping, right? It's full of all of this stuff here. You're going to experience that on your mind when it comes time to meditate. You will experience it in the form of you can't hold your mind. Your mind will just run. And what is it running to? It's running to the same things that are in parts of your scheme, your ego scheme. That's all it's running to. Your mind, it runs to its ego scheme stuff. Right? And all of that grasping. So just very quickly, just to review the basics of the whole philosophy behind meditation, because we have to understand that, right? When we talk about simra, the level of repetition of the mantra, right? And we first try to locate ourselves here at the eye center, right? And the ideal is to hold the attention here, is to withdraw the attention from this normal activity in your schemes. Is that right? Your ego scheme. And what happens is that we try to withdraw the attention here to the third eye. And before we can even get through one repetition, the attention is gone out, back into some part of that ego scheme somewhere, right? And very often, we never get it back here again, right? Or if we do bring it back here, again it goes back there. This thing that is pulling it back, that gravity, right, that keeps pulling your attention back is based on the habituated patterns that are set up in your mind stream. Do you follow me? Those patterns and tendencies have been generated by the way you have lived, right? So what you're doing outside of your meditation probably is the greatest shape of what you will experience in your meditation. It's the activities you're engaged in when you're not. But in any case, what is happening, Lieutenant, is that as you sit there and meditate, you are restraining your attention from getting involved in ego schemes. You are de-egotizing yourself, right? Because your attention runs out into some series of thoughts. And you want to think about that stuff. You know what I mean? It could be a beautiful discourse going on. Man, you know, and you get so many insights. Insights are just bursting in on you. And you don't want to restrain your attention here. You want to actually pursue that line of reasoning and thinking because it's pleasurable and acceptable. And the discipline means you got to pull your attention out of that in return. You got to deprive it. You see? And so forth and so on. But even before you get there, even to sit physically means that you first have to struggle with the ego, doesn't it? Because it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and you really do not want to get up and sit down. You really don't want to do that. I understand. We all have to understand that. Why don't you want to get up and sit down? But you have to understand, why aren't you meditating? It's far more important to know why you don't meditate than to know all of these details about meditation. So I would like to pause for a moment because I spent many hours talking about why you should meditate, right, and all this other thing. But now let's examine why you don't meditate. What is that? What's up with that? Oh, you volunteered first?
But I have to tell the truth.
now you tell the truth. Why don't you meditate? Because you know the method, you got all of that. Why don't you use that?
Laziness.
Laziness. Right, you lazy. Now go into that, G.
Why am I lazy?
Yes. Why is you lazy? Because there's some kind of ignorance. There's something in you that doesn't understand something that results in you being lazy. For instance, you might be lazy because you think you got more time than you really have. You might be lazy because there's something wrong in your diet somewhere. You know, but whatever that is producing that laziness in you, behind that laziness is wrong. You see, you have some wrong kind of view. There will be plenty of time to do this meditation. I mean, or I'm not going to get anything, or I'm not, I mean, there's some wrong view somewhere.
Well, man just keep, you know, and which is so stupid. Well, I just have to sleep.
But
you know, and I keep saying, I'm tired, and I'm not tired.
Sure, and the view is this.
And I sleep all the time.
Sure, I understand. See, you're honest. Now, but I ain't dropping. But we have to understand that when we look at sleep, and we can see this clearly, that look at all the sleep that you've been getting already. Now look at that. You know, if we live to be 70, you know, we will spend 20 years sleeping. Just all down, just 20 years like a course. Right? And you've been getting all this sleep. And what has been the result of it?
Nothing.
And the master says, seeing this, drop this sleep and do your meditation. As long as you see sleeping as being more important than meditation, you're going to keep sleeping. Is that right? Yeah. And you can't just say, well, so-and-so say I should get up. No, that doesn't work. You must see that you wasted so many years sleeping, unnecessarily sleeping. You're not sleeping because, you know, it's just a habit.
It is. It's a bad habit.
It's a way of distracting, isn't it? Somewhere maybe when you were little and things got rough and tough and boring, you develop that's right. You develop a style of distracting yourself. You go in the bed and go to sleep and sleep your way through the process.
And it
just
is.
carry it over.
From a childhood, I would just go to sleep. And I was supposed to have X'd out the world. sleep, I'm still dreaming it or
Yes,
whatever, you
yes,
know, but,
yes.
yeah, and even starting back over with this meditation thing, and, you know, I don't use a clock to wake me up, because, you know, God wake me up, thank God, you know, but it's kind of funny, because even I was fighting it, starting all over again, it's like he had shook me and woke me up, and I got up mad about it, and I said, Dad, you
Disturbing
know,
the sleep.
right, you done woke me up. And it's so stupid, isn't it? Because he done woke you up, allow you to get up, and you mad because he done woke you up.
But that's a whole other issue. The point is that you have to see what is it that why aren't you doing your meditation? Yes, take it up.
For me, I've just realized that the desire, well, my question about the desire is that I think the desire is innately, well, I guess it's in everyone to some, you know, just the simple fact that we are a piece of the Creator, but that desire based, I think, on your karma or whatever, is at a level that's different from everyone else. And for me, I think now I've realized that, and you have to ask yourself this question: do you is your desire to be enlightened truly greater than your desires of the world? Are they truly great? And if they aren't, then go on and go after, do the things that you want to do.
Yes.
Then that's fine. And maybe later in another life. So I really, at some point, I've had to question myself on that. But then I keep coming back, even though where I am right now, I know that there are things that I have to do.
Yes.
But I ultimately still see that. Now I don't know if my ultimate attainment will come in this lifetime, but I still know. It's always pulling me back.
Yes,
There's no way.
something is
It
coming.
always pulls me. It always pulls
And
me.
the view is this, that there is something in the world that is still of that. There's some way, there's still that hope that, damn, I'm going to look up through hook or crook and find some shit that's going to produce happiness.
And
It is still that illusion.
And the
And
Creator
that
always
pulls you.
No, the Creator always pulls. I mean, those things.
Pulls
I
you
think,
too.
but it always.
And then it comes
Creator
back.
is still always
Right.
right.
And normally it comes back because you find out again that, damn, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And then when it collapses, you come back. Right? Because where else is there to go? But we got to begin to see really what is there that is keeping us from applying ourselves to the spiritual practice. Yes, sir? Right. Yes, ma'am.
A lot of mornings there's a struggle in getting up. There'd be an aftermath of thinking. It's that it's pulling me. I know one of the things that was that, I got to struggle with is to pull ways that since I can't have my way on this thing.
Yeah, that's another thing too.
So
But
you
I
got to,
can't have my way on this thing.
yes,
Because after all, I'm sacrificing myself and
Yes.
doing all this stuff. You know how that
yes,
chattering goes on.
yes, yes, yes,
And because I can't have my way, the hell with it.
yes. Yes. Again, we can find that since my progress is not going the way I want it to go, and since my meditation is not the way I need it to be, and et cetera, and because now, this thing will not fit in the way I want it, right, I'm not going to do it. Fundamentally, if I can't attain enlightenment in between time, in between meals, the hell with it. Yes. And so again, there's something in our views that are wrong, that is obscuring it, right? And makes us pull away from our meditation, right? And that there's what I call there's taints in the mind, right? There's some taint in the mind. It's sometimes, as I said last time, sometimes we have the feeling that, well, we know more than these Buddhas, or know as much as these Buddhas. And the way I got it figured is that I should be able to become enlightened, whether I meditate regularly and punctually or not meditate regularly and punctually. I mean, and that becomes a view, you see. And that is a wrong view. But you're going to find, when you look very, very closely at it, you're going to begin to see all of the things that, and views that we hold, that prohibits and prevents us from engaging in the spiritual practice. And the tragedy is this, is that when you hit that bardo of dying, then you will realize how very wrong you have been. But it will be too late because you have not developed any skill and you cannot become a mystic on your deathbed. I know a lot of you plan to do it. Right? Let me just hit you off at the path. You're not going to master yoga when that cancer sets in. That's not, you know what I mean? Yeah, you will be motivated, of course. But you could even deal with the little pain in the body before you had cancer. Now, how you going to deal with the pain in the body now that you got cancer? You could not restrain your mind then. How you going to restrain your mind now and all this stuff? Your ankle was hurting just a little bit and you couldn't concentrate. Now your whole damn body is aching. How you going to concentrate? Come on, give it up. Right? In that bardo of dying, you're not going to become low.
And I think that's what did it for me too, Bhagwan, with bardo, because I even had the mindset like, since we're so conditioned to be, rewarded for the things that you do, whether it be monetary or whatever, really enlightenment wasn't enough. Because I had in my mindset, well, I've been here once before, what the heck? You know what I'm saying?
Wrong view again. Right.
Very wrong view.
Yeah,
And then when I
wrong
heard the bardo, and I was, oh my God, that's sick.
Very
Even
wrong.
to the point where you even willing, well, let me just come back.
Sure. Because you don't believe. You don't believe, you do not understand. Your view is not mature yet. You really are under the illusion that there's no possibility for you to be an insect again. You have not understood the law of karma. You have not understood the law of reincarnation. You have not seen any of this stuff. Not seeing that, it has no impact on you. It doesn't shape anything. You're still functioning under this primordial ignorance. You're still moving out of your ignorance. You're still driven by your ego, right? And you're still hatching schemes, right? You're still hatching schemes. And you con games. And basically, and you will go out like that. But the one good thing about it, Ronnie Rock, is that all of us, with no exception, you're going to have a day with truth. Sooner or later. That's the one redeeming aspect of it all. When you hit that bardo of dying, I guarantee you're going to get sobered up. Very, very quickly. But it's just a tragedy that you don't appreciate this human opportunity until you lay on your deathbed.
And for me, like I realized, I'm blessed to be in a body that I'm not in so much distress and suffering that I have the time. There's no reason. There's no, this is the opportunity.
This is the opportunity. And the problem, Kathy Rod, that we don't have that view real clear.
Yeah.
We have, it's a little vague, like you said, and we drift in the view and we drift out of the view, right? But that's how it started. I mean, it's better than before. There was a time when we didn't even drift into the view, right? So at first, it's a drifting experience. Sometimes you drift into the view, and then you drift out of the view. So you have this drifting process going on. But with practice and reflection and contemplation, satsang, eventually you become more and more rooted in this view. And that view becomes much more established, right? And now you rest in this. There's this kind of view that, and that's what we call the king of all views, is the view of life based on the awareness of your death. That is the king Raja. That is the royal view. That's the highest one, right? That's the one, for instance, that Buddha taught. That was the first view established. And if we can hold that view, then we're in a better shape. Much better shape. And if we can't hold that view, then we go. So holding on to these views, right? But you will begin to notice then, if you reflect deeply, what are the things that are prohibiting you from really applying yourself spiritually to this path? And you got to get into that. You got to get into that. All right, let's take a little break, and then we'll come back in 10 minutes. So finish.